I'll be honest, I've fallen in love with Gemini. You know, if you've used Gemini lately, formerly Google Bard.
Yeah, no, I've not, but I know that you're a big fan.
Yeah, I am. I mean, I'm going to let you into a little secret here, and a lot of people will probably hate me for it, but since I lost my iPhone a few months ago and I had no choice to move over to Android, I've started to like Android. I know, especially when it comes to the development side. But looking at Gemini compared to Siri, and I mean, they're all really advancing and they're all really good at personalized responses. But I think when I showed you that demonstration, when I was asking it a development based question and it gave me a response in real time and I could continue that conversation, I just feel it's amazing how far we've come over the past couple of years. Good afternoon and welcome to the Health Automated podcast. My name's Jack White and I'm one of your hosts for today. And joining me is my co-host, Mark Tops, a very familiar face within social care, co-host of the Care in View podcast and an author of many online, should we say, information documents and posts all about social care from tech and compliance. So I'll hand over to you, Mark. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad. Been a busy week, been all over the globe. Well, not literally the globe, the UK. So, yeah, it's nice to be in the office today, catching up on some admin. Obviously, doing our podcast, one of my favourite days of the week. This. So, how about you?
Yeah, not too bad. It's been a busy week. Not as busy as you, kind of all over, but yeah, no, just busy. I think the reality of all those tasks that you put off before Christmas, thinking I'll do that in the new year, are finally catching up. And I think everybody's obviously done the same. And it's just, yeah, manic inboxes, manic to-do lists. But yeah, I feel like slowly on top of it. But yeah, I can't complain.
No, it's good to see that you're finally getting out of that sort of ditch. It's sort of like mandatory January, isn't it? You know, everyone starts doing all of the stuff, the compliance, trying to get everything all in order from the end of last year. But I think I've still got over 200 emails in my mailbox that I've got to go to. So that'll
Sat
be
up
my
last
week.
night till about 1 a.m. and I was like, I'm just going to plow through these and just get them out. The problem is, no sooner have I plowed through them, there's about another 50 in there when I log back in the next day. So yeah, it's just a endless task. Right?
It is. I mean, it's the perks of being a busy person in social care, isn't it, Mark?
Great pack to have.
Well, today we're going to be talking about ethics in AI. So, maybe we can talk about some ways and solutions to try and help streamline our workflow. But I mean, AI, obviously, as we know, one of them big subjects, big flashpoint in social care. We've done podcast on this before, but obviously things have changed since then. So we'll have obviously a bit more of a discussion around that. But yeah, so are you using any new AI systems at the moment, Mark?
The only new one I'm using is Google's ILM, which it's not new, but it seems to have just had a bit of an update. But yeah, I think I'm a bit restricted because we can't use it where I work in terms of for work, so there's a restriction on it. So it's only really if I'm using it outside of work for anything kind of non-day to day. But yeah, I found the Google ILM is really good for just taking, like, if there's been an update in social care, of taking that and popping it in and asking it to create a podcast, and then while I'm walking the dog, actually just listening to something for half an hour, as opposed to try and walk and read and avoid the potholes in the path.
Oh no, do you know what? I completely understand that. Gone are the days though where you just had to constantly read it. Obviously, we'll talk about some of the AIs later, but I'll be honest, I've fallen in love with Gemini. You know, if you've used Gemini lately, formerly Google Bard.
Yeah, no, I've not, but I know that you're a big fan.
Yeah, I am. I mean, I'm going to let you into a little secret here, and a lot of people will probably hate me for it. But since I lost my iPhone a few months ago and I had no choice to move over to Android, I've started to like Android. I know, especially when it comes to the development side. But looking at Gemini compared to Siri, and I mean, they're all really advancing and they're all really good at personalized responses. But I think when I showed you that demonstration, when I was asking it a development-based question, and it gave me a response in real time, and I could continue that conversation, I just feel it's amazing how far we've come over the past couple of years. I mean, I'm not sure if you remember when Siri first came out. It was very linear, wasn't it? You'd ask it questions and it'd be, sorry, I didn't understand that. Can you please repeat that again? And it was sort of like, to now you can have fluent conversations. It's amazing, you know.
My children have Android devices, but I think even the responsiveness when you ask it something, like even now, if I was to ask my iPhone, I won't say, well, it probably won't even come on, but if I say, "Hey Siri," we'll see, like my phone is literally right next to me, it didn't even turn on, and I just think actually it's just not responsive at all to what actually you need.
No, I agree. I mean, in some ways, I like the sensitivity side of things because I'm not sure if you have like an Alexa at home or, but sometimes mine hears words and then activates, and you just suddenly see the light come on and you're like, oh, and sometimes I do wonder what they do actually hear. And I'm not sure if you've ever been into the Amazon app or the Alexa app where you can actually see some of the recordings it's listened to. And in some of them, no word Alexa was ever mentioned, and it was a another, but I understand what you're saying because when it comes to that real world response, you don't want to have to be like, hello, and really over elaborate what you're saying because it's not really a natural conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I did see a video the other day on TikTok warning people about Alexa devices and to double check the settings that are on there because of the amount of information it's capturing. But yeah, it's concerning because I don't think you necessarily think about that when you're purchasing these products to put into your home or somebody else's home.
Well, it's the ethics behind it, isn't it? The big privacy concerns. Who's the arbiter of the data? Where's it stored? Who's listening to the data? If you look at some of the T's and C's, especially with a lot of the language module based AI, it says that humans along the lines will sort of analyze random samples and stuff like that. So, to some of the scripts, some of them are being heard, but you would never know what the outcome of that was.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what did they listen to it for? What are they taking away from it? I know some of them say that they're non-identifiable. It gets sent as a random sample. Does it? Because there's been cases where they've been used in law enforcement, hasn't there? Where they've been used to prevent crime, for example. I mean, this brings us actually perfectly on to like how we choose the systems and the ethics behind it, really. I mean, when we're looking at the types of AI people use, especially in a workplace, I'll be honest, I have an Alexa in my office. I've now got Gemini, I've got Jack through Health Automated, and I've got Siri on my Mac. Now, when it comes to what ones I use, I'll be honest, I don't use Siri, not even for reminders anymore. I used to when I had iPhones because I had no other alternative, and but now I'm so happy I have a different option for each. But the one problem I do find is I find it sometimes I get confused between them because there's three of them now. So it's like sometimes I'll tell Gemini to turn my lights off. Do you ever experience that, or is that just me?
No, well, no, I used to, so yeah, we used to have I can't remember who Philips light the Huey, but we had a pet rabbit, indoor rabbit, and it ate through the wires of the main hub. And yeah, long story short, we have all the bulbs in place, but no hub, and I refuse to fork out any more money for a third hub in our home. But yeah, no, I would end up trying to tell my iPhone to turn off the lights when it wasn't actually my iPhone that I needed. But the same, we've got a Philips robotic Hoover that you can talk to via the. But yeah, you end up saying Alexa or something else as opposed to what you actually need to be saying.
Yeah, agreed. And I sometimes do it with my children, if I'm honest. We call them the wrong name. I think it's natural, isn't it? At times, especially when you're jumping between two sort of things, you will naturally get confusion with that. And I mean, this all comes down then onto one of our points of how do we know which one to choose? And a lot of the time, I personally feel when I'm looking for an AI, especially some device that's going to enhance my life. So I have one of them Eufy robot vacuums, kind of like what you have at home, and I love that. That's a device that's going to improve my time, make me more efficient. But researching it was quite difficult because it does use AI. And my concern with that is it maps your home. Now, you imagine back on these servers, they've got all of these maps of all of these houses and profiling. So, who holds the data? Where does it go? But realistically, I feel that we sometimes have to also make compromises. Well, if I want that to happen, that's one of the limitations. If you, that's like saying, I want a bank to hold my money, but I don't want the bank to look at my transactions, but I want them to protect me from fraud, So it's sort of like all of these areas, sometimes there is a compromise, but ease of use. I like to go for something that is known and more than likely been researched by a lot of people. So when new things do come to the market, I do like it, but I would never pump a lot of sensitive information into an untrusted AI. I have got to build confidence with a system to build that trust. I'm not sure how you feel about that, but realistically, I feel there is a mistrust with AI, and people don't know what questions to ask at times. So there's just this big default concern that most AIs are bad and they're just there to harvest your data.
Yeah, I think the problem is there's a lack of information. There's a lack of information from government. There's a lack of information from the regulator. And then I think that just creates a vacuum where you go onto social media or somewhere and people are pumping out misinformation, but that fills that gap and then that becomes the truth because nobody's counteracting that. I mean, I do completely agree with you. When I was looking at, a robotic Hoover, there's so many on the market, you don't really know where to start. And they don't actually tell you, like in terms of you talking there about mapping your home, you don't really think about that being AI. You just think of that as a cool feature that it's got so that then it knows where it's going around the home. So I think sometimes we're using products that we don't necessarily know are using AI and what they're doing with that data. And even if we do, are we using it because it makes life easier? Because actually, even if you know it's mapping your home and there's concerns about who's holding that version of your map or the details of your home, actually, would you worry about that even though you've got somebody to do your hoovering, which is a lot? Because I'm the first to say that robotic Hoover has changed my life in terms of don't have to worry about hoovering and coming home and it's just done. But yeah, I never really thought about actually who holds that data of the floor plan of my home upstairs and downstairs.
No, agreed. And this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, people would argue about someone holding that data, but then realistically, the developer, land registry, and all these other people have probably got some form of blueprint of your home or, some sort of plan of your home in a greater detail. But people don't worry too much about that then being the case. You could go onto Rightmove or other websites are available, or and look at pretty much any house on your street that's been sold and look at the inside of it. So realistically, are you arguing the concern of, oh, because someone's got my data and I've voluntarily given it, you've got the choice to not use the systems as well. But realistically, if you don't agree to the company's terms and conditions, then you're not probably going to be able to use that platform to the best of its ability. And when we look at how these systems do improve our lives, like whether that's through work, our everyday living, it's personally got to be a system that works for you, in my opinion. In a market that's becoming saturated with AI-based technology from image generation, which in itself is quite scary. I mean, some of these deep fake videos that we see going around, it's created a massive mistrust online, isn't it? Is that real? Is it not? I mean, you look at how good graphics are coming along now from games, and AI is generating it just by saying, create me a video with like X, Y, Z, and it does it with really good detail. You can see why people do mistrust it, and that is the concern. But when I'm looking at an AI, for example, that's going to benefit me, it's one that I feel I can use every day in my life that meets that balance of compromise. I know if I'm choosing to use a system, some form of information is going to be exchanged. Even when I'm sending emails through Office, that's going through certain organizations' mail servers. There's a chance that that's going to be read by someone or something, even though they tell me it's not encrypted. Sorry, it is encrypted. So realistically, we live in a data society where data is key, and without data, you can't get functions. To improve your life. Netflix will monitor you on your choices and preferences. Amazon will from your purchases, those that have club cards and other sort of, they use you as a form of marketing. They know they do a lot of research on you through what you purchase, and you go in and go scan. Oh, that's fine. I get £2 off my shopping for giving them all of that data on my shopping habits. So there's always an underlying exchange of data somewhere, and it's just, am I able to accept that as a person, and will it really impact me that much?
Yeah, no, completely agree. And I think if anybody's using a loyalty card and you don't really get anything, I'm thinking about a Sparks card right here. Actually, why are you giving up your data for nothing in return? I think at least, with some of the supermarkets, you actually are getting money off, or you're kind of giving that balance between the data you're providing them in terms of what you're buying, when you're buying it, which store you're buying it from, versus money off or coupons or whatever else you're getting. I do agree that the biggest way for me is that you have to try and test it. I think when it comes to kind of AI every day, in terms of, ChatGPT was the first on the market. And I think when I speak to people quite often default back to that. I think because it's just become the most known, the first that people use, a bit probably like social media in terms of people seem to gravitate back to Facebook. And I often think, is that because it was the first one there? And it's the one we all know and feel comfortable with, even though all the others come on the market. There's none really that stand the test of time like Facebook have. I think for me, when I'm looking, I want to make sure there's a freemium version, because there are so many on the market that sometimes you don't know where to start. And everybody has an opinion of it, but unless you're going to start using it for work and personal and whatever you're going to use, you're not going to know whether it's going to work for you the same as it is for somebody else. And I'd avoid anything with a year, anything that over a month contract, because I think actually AI is moving so quickly. You sign into anything long term in terms of like something that you're using every day, even if that's something to help you, I don't know, monitor your emails or do anything. I think, in 6 months' time, that's going to be a lot further down the line in terms of what it can do and able to do for you than it is right now.
I agree. When we look at what's now, you imagine where we're going to be in sort of 2, 3 years' time. I mean, someone who works with AI on a daily basis, some of the things I see emerging on the market around the world, not necessarily health and social care, but just in general, is quite fascinating but scary. I mean, if you look at a lot of the AI applications in military tech, we are starting to see the realms of Skynet. We're not far away from that. So all of these films that people was watching 20, 30 years ago going, oh, imagine that'll happen. We're coming into that society. But then equally, I look at the positives of AI and how this works. And this is where I'm a realist, and I look at the cases where it's been used for greatness. And a lot of that is in medicine, as an example. You look at creating vaccinations. I'm not going to get into that rabbit hole of, but years ago it would take decades to create a vaccination. But nowadays, through AI, using gene sequencing, profiling of the population, looking at all of these different things, make decisions, and a lot quicker than we can. So with the usage applications of AI, we're going to see improvement in treating and managing diseases. We're going to see cures. We're already seeing cures in our lifetime. You imagine where we're going to be in the next sort of 50, 60 years with AI. Humans will start living longer, and you'll start to see more autonomy of these machines, if you will, taking over your daily living. You won't have to waste time, as we're starting to see now on coming home to clean homes in the next 20 years. You'll have something like one of Elon Musk's Tesla robots as an example, going around doing all of that for you. So you'll come home to a meal, and what will humans then do with our time? That is the question after. So once we've got to the point where we've automated everything that we feel we possibly can to benefit us, what do we then do?
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the telltale sign, isn't it, of what do we do with our time? I think just touching there on what you spoke about around like the health advances, I think when I'm looking at kind of AI and it's mainly in health and social care that I'm looking at it from, most of the news articles are around health in terms of actually how they're using it to detect, dementia a lot earlier on, heart attacks, issues in your brain. And actually, you are right. I think actually we're going to identify things a lot earlier on. There's already surgeons talking about how the robotics are, doing surgery and it's more precision than ever before. Actually, our operations are going to be more effective, so it's going to have less impact further down the line of any fallout or anything else going wrong. And I do think it will benefit us. I think my worry is that if you don't want it, it's becoming very hard to opt out. And I think those people that used to live off the grid, you're probably never going to be able to live off the grid as much as you ever were able to, because like you say, it is everywhere. You go to hospital, it's there, you know. Yeah, I think that side of things is going to become a lot harder for a lot of people that don't necessarily want to give up their data.
See, one thing I've noticed, and I've started coining these sort of phrases together, is generational remorse and generational anxiety and generational expectation. So the anxiety is the generation that we're living in now is always on the technical curve. So we're always worried of what's going to happen next, the what ifs. But the remorses are, we wish we had this sooner because we could have saved X, Y, Z. So why didn't we adopt it with the look back approach? Now, when we look at how we are, you imagine 200 years ago, a human on this planet, if you was to try and show them something like a laptop or a phone now, that would have been scary for that person. We are experiencing the same as what people experienced years and years ago, the fear of the unknown, the fear of looking forward. So where we're scared of looking forward because we're always worried about the what if, that actually slows us down with the adoption. Because as humans, we are naturally risk adverse to the unknown and change, and rightly so in some cases. Personally, I feel the reason we use health as a good example is because health sells. People want to hear good. People don't want to hear the negatives all the time. So we try and flood it with the good news around health because we see where there's a lot of humanitarian changes that are going to be beneficial to us. But look at other applications when it comes to energy management, like with smart grids and stuff like that, that can help save energy costs. I know it's a joke at the time where we pay the most, I think, worldwide for energy, but like smart grids that people will have their cars plugged into, and at random times from the day, they'll get cheap energy because it's using AI to offload to the vehicles and be a benefit rather than discharge it out. When it comes to waste management and so forth, environmental factors are benefiting a lot from AI. We're able to predict weather, storms a lot better. But also, when you look at in space, AI is used a lot to predict where, outer planetary objects will be, what's coming in, where we're at, what's going on with the poles. And it's amazing the applications it does get used. And I feel that it's going to be a big part of people's lives. And where people are like, I don't want to adopt it, I might not have to. People at some point would have been reluctant to adopt a car. You won't get me in one of them. If it goes over 20 miles an hour, I'm a dead person, was the opinion people had back then, but would go faster on horseback. And this is the crazy sort of the way we look at things. And I feel where we're getting more aware of technology in the next 30 to 50 years, I don't feel that you'll get the anxieties because people will live in a technical expectation where it will keep growing and growing and growing, and it will just become part of the norm. But people that were born in the 60s and 70s, some of them, computers were coming in their lifetime. People born before that, computers were coming, later on in their life. So they was less likely to adopt them. And this is where we fear now. I feel sometimes I get left behind with technology. I don't know, I work in tech, but sometimes I feel like I can't keep up because there's so much going on so many different verticals.
No, you are right. And I think it moves so quickly. And as soon as you kind of got your head around one thing, actually, there's an update and it's moved 10 steps forward. I think for me, listening to you there, I think a lot of it for general members of the public is a lack of insight. I think there isn't one place you can go and find that information that's all factual. And I think then it is just, well, the world of social media allows you to put anything out, whether it's true or false. And I think, I think as more and more information comes into the public in terms of what there is, how it benefits them, I think more and more people will come on board. And like you say, it'll just become the norm of the expectation. And I think when America took down TikTok for a couple of, I think actually that really shone a light on kind of other countries around the world and what they're doing and how they live. And I kind of look at Shanghai as that example. I think people were joining other platforms in America,
Yeah.
but were then seeing a completely different world because actually they joined a Chinese app that was showing them kind of what Shanghai looks like in the future, and how different that is. And I think for those Americans, that must have opened their eyes greatly compared to what they probably have seen on platforms already. But I think in turn, that's then obviously being shared on other social media platforms. So the UK then gets a glimpse of that. I just don't think there's not a central place, is there, of this is what's coming. Everything's very disjointed in terms of technology and AI. And I don't know whether that's because it's a very competitive, I mean, you might know more, but I assume it's a very competitive market. So actually, a lot of it's probably held closer to their chest in terms of what they're working on and what's already out there.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, what you're seeing on the surface, it's like an iceberg underneath. I mean, what people don't realize, even AI is being used for good in certain capacities, but a lot of the social media providers, for instance, Facebook, if I upload a photo, an AI in the background scans that to make sure there's no indecent images of people, to auto flag it and so forth like that. So there's examples of how AI is being used for the good. But then once again, what happens to all them analyzed photos? Where do they get stored? Well, you're already storing it on Facebook anyway. So, people ask that question, but it's a feature there because realistically, it's there to protect people in some way. But other people argue against it. But then if you don't want your information shared, don't use social media. That's kind of the caveat with that. If you wish to use the platform, once again, it's down to the terms and conditions and whether you accept them. Now, when it comes to privacy with the data, realistically, being based in the UK, we're always going to say go for something that's based within the EU, that's GDPR compliant, meets all of that policies and procedures that you may need, preferably in the UK, but as long as it meets the EU GDPR regulations, you should be okay. But a lot of the tech is not European and UK based. Although the Prime Minister said that we want to become an AI superpower and so forth like that, at this moment in time, we're not. We are good at AI, but we're not an AI superpower. We don't have our own UK-based social media platforms. That's a fact. We don't. Everyone we have is international. The government uses it to market and advertise, but then tells us to be weary. So there's a lot of misconception and mistrust just in general when it comes to the data and who has it. And you're right in what you're saying. When you look at social media in a different country, when I travel around the world with work and I access like things like Facebook and even TikTok where it's allowed, and I get the feeds from location based what's going on, completely different perception. And you do get a biased feed coming in depending on what country you are in my opinion. We get a lot of mistrust stuff signaling against Russia and China, naturally filtered in, which causes us to be mistrusting, of individuals. And it does cause a natural bias because of the information you are being fed. And that is one of the concerns, because it essentially can be used in a way to brainwash you. When we say we're giving you a curated feed, we are radicalizing you into this way of thinking, and that's what can sometimes happen.
Yeah, I think it's concerning because we all use these apps every day and you're not really aware of it. And the feed is often based obviously off our likes, what we're liking, what we're interacting with, and then you end up seeing more of that and less of anything else. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like X, Twitter. I still really like it because I think actually you've got that freedom, that voice and that freedom still. And whilst there's a lot of people that abuse that, right, actually, if there's something that pops up on my phone, on Sky News or BBC News, the first place I'll go is to X because you get that rounded opinion of people from all over the world that isn't as, and you obviously have to be mindful that you need to filter it yourself, but I find that actually it's probably the most honest app out of all of them, as opposed to some of the others that are filtering it down to what they want you to be able to see.
Yeah, see, I now use this news app called Ground. I'm not sure if you've seen it. It's a paid for app, but essentially, if a news article comes out, you can curate to what you want to see from around the world. But when it tells you something, it automatically links all of the articles in from all of the mainstream media, and it shows you the bias on how it's being reported. So it will show you articles from the left, articles from the right, centre, left, centre, right, and centre. And then that way, it will give you an overview of what people are saying, what each side is saying, and then it will give you a rating on if it's factual or non-factual, and then it takes you directly to them sources as well. Now, you argue like in some ways, well, that's really good because it's allowing you to make your mind up and your judgment in one app. But once again, it's using AI to tailor your news feed around what you like to see. So, if say for instance I like more right-leaning media, if I keep viewing them browsers, it's going to suggest more right-leaning stories for me naturally. But it's still a good start. And I recommend, especially when it comes to, these pieces, especially when it comes to like data, where's it going, conspiracy theories with AI, do your own research. That's all I can say. You've got to satisfy yourself. One other person's opinion or judgment might not necessarily reflect yours. And you've got to be satisfied that it's got to meet the application that you need it for, and I'm not sure if you've noticed these devices do not listen, right? But if I'm talking about something and buying it, suddenly like my feed goes, oh, here you go. And I proved a point with this. I was speaking to my wife not too long ago about rattan furniture for the garden. We've got a rattan set, right? We bought one last year, so we don't need another one. But for 2 days, I kept mentioning it. Then suddenly, I kept getting all these curated feeds from like Wayfair ads and everything like that. Oh, you might like some rattan furniture, and I was like, and it does ask that question if they're telling us we're not, but it's a bit coincidental.
Yeah, I mean, there was that viral trend where women that wanted babies were videoing themselves with the partner's phone talking about, dummies, cots, prams, whatever else. And then it obviously they were showing their boyfriends' feeds like a few days later with all the adverts around baby items and bits and pieces. So, but we're all being there. It pops up on your phone, it pops up on your computer with something that you're talking about. And yeah, it can't be coincidental. Um, Conscious of time. So for me, when you spoke there about some of the things you do, I'm going to just come to you in a minute around from a tech point of view, what people can do in terms of is there anything because nobody read well, some people do, a lot of people don't read the terms and conditions, and then before they know it, it's probably too late or they don't realize what's happening. For me, when we talk about our feed being fed to us in terms of what we've liked, I always if I can on the app, and not all of them are possible, but reset my feed in my settings. So TikTok allows you to do that really easily. Instagram's is quite hidden, but you can do it. And the others, I don't think you can. But it just resets everything in terms of then you're not got a bias on something. In terms of privacy, though, and you spoke earlier about kind of Facebook, and I think when you actually look into it further, I think Meta is probably one of the worst ones, especially kind of Messenger. What can people do? Are there any easy takeaways that people can do around actually I'm using all these things, or I'm thinking of using, I don't know, a paid version of Copilot or ChatGPT or whatever it is? How can I protect my data and my,
All right, so good question. First of all, if it's a paid for service, it's probably going to be more secure, 100%. If it's free, what are they getting from it? That's what you've got to ask yourself. Okay, so if it's a free service, what's the provider getting for my data? And they'll be using that maybe to sell for advertising, targeted marketing. That's how Meta, X, and all these other companies make their money. People put content on there, they get sponsored ads going in around what you like, and that's how they monetize. So, there's a compromise with that. When it comes to using the AI-based systems, obviously, it depends on the application that you need it for. If you're going to be pumping sensitive information into there on a work basis, don't use anything that's open and free. Use something that's locked down to your parameters and making sure it's hosted where you're happy. I would always recommend when it comes to like general device security, all of these apps to some degree will log and track. They'll have device logs, unique identifiers for your device, session IDs, whatever you want to call it. They track some form of baseline data. Some of the apps are really, really good. I've heard people say they use encrypted messengers for work and so forth like that. But ultimately, if you're using things like an open Wi-Fi, on a public Wi-Fi, it's non-secure, and you're logging into all your accounts and stuff like that, there's a general rule of thumb that anyone could see that through just poor data security. So it's making sure you've got good passwords, that parameters, you're using encryption where it's possible. And I would always recommend just use free applications with caution. There's always a benefit to someone for using the application. You're getting your benefit, but the provider's also getting theirs. If you are looking for a specific purpose, reach out to someone who knows about AI and the application that you're trying to use. There's a good few people out in the market, depending on what application you're looking for, and they could probably sit down with you and talk about your options and what would work for you. Realistically, doing a data protection impact assessment is going to help ensure that you're considering all the variables, but making sure it's the right fit for you.
Great advice. Yeah, and I think you touching there on data protection assessments, I still don't think they're as widely undertaken as they should be. I think there's still, as much as there's a lack of awareness around AI and data, I think there's a lack of awareness around actually the importance of a data protection impact assessment as well. But maybe one for another conversation for another day.
Definitely. And no, thank you very much, Mark. Really enjoyed our chat today. I think we've covered a lot of topics. If anyone's got any questions about AI, ask in the chat, on the social media platforms. But don't forget to follow us on Spotify, and then we'll answer some of your questions in our next podcasts. But
thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And from me, goodbye. And we'll see you next time.
Goodbye. See you later.